Looking back on the battle later, Red Feather felt both pride and sorrow. It had been the most intense, relentless fight he had ever encountered, a true test of courage and loyalty. It was a terrible battle, he would later recall, the hardest I had ever seen. For Red Feather, this was more than a skirmish. It was a testament to the warrior spirit, a fight for their land, their families, and their legacy. The memories of that day, he knew, would be carried forward by his people, woven into the fabric of their story for generations to come. As the first faint light crept across the horizon, Red Feather's rest was abruptly interrupted by the sharp, urgent voice of a woman echoing through the camp. "You young men take the horses to pasture," she shouted. Her voice was insistent, and even in his drowsy state, Red Feather felt a prickle of unease. Still, he lay there a moment longer, considering returning to his sleep. But before he could drift off again, another voice, louder and filled with panic, cut through the morning fog. "Go get the horses. Buffaloes are stampeding." With a start, he bolted upright, realizing that something was very wrong. Then, like a whirlwind, Magpie galloped into the camp, his horse at full speed, his face a mask of urgency. "Get away as fast as you can. Don't wait for anything. The white men are charging." His shout rang out, sharp and clear, sending a shockwave through the camp. The meaning was unmistakable. Red Feather's heart pounded as he jumped to his feet, grabbing his rifle, his senses immediately on alert. All around him, the sounds of gunfire erupted, the sharp cracks of rifles breaking the stillness of dawn. He quickly took in the scene, spotting soldiers on foot, firing into Sitting Bull's camp, their shots relentless and deadly. Villagers ran in every direction, their faces stricken with fear, leaving behind belongings, and in some cases, loved ones, in the scramble to escape. The people in Sitting Bull's camp fled toward the Oglala camp, hoping for shelter, but the Oglalas, upon seeing the approaching soldiers, began to scatter as well. Everywhere, warriors and families alike scrambled to catch their ponies and flee toward the nearby bluff hills. The rising panic was tangible as people frantically tried to mount their horses and find some measure of safety. Red Feather quickly secured his bridle, but as he was about to mount, Crazy Horse, a fearless warrior whose name struck both fear and respect in others, appeared beside him. His expression was intense, though his voice carried a note of frustration. "Our ponies aren't in yet," he said, eyes scanning the surroundings. Without a second thought, Red Feather replied, "Take any horse." In moments like these, there was no time to be choosy. Survival was paramount. With his own horse ready, Red Feather rode hard, joining the warriors who had begun to assemble on the hill. Warriors from different camps, Oglalas, Unkpapas, Cheyennes, converged there, each armed and resolute. The sun was now rising higher, casting a stark light across the battlefield below, illuminating the unfolding chaos. From his vantage point, Red Feather saw families running, scattering across the open ground, while warriors clustered together, preparing to defend their people with everything they had. With a fierce determination, Red Feather called out to the gathered warriors, his voice firm and commanding, "Why wait for the women and children to get tired? Come on!" With that, he led the charge down the hill, their war cries echoing across the plains. Ahead of them, 2 flags marked the soldiers' positions, standing out as both a challenge and a target. As they descended, the soldiers hastily took down their flags, retreating toward the cover of the woods. But the Sioux warriors pressed on, their resolve unbroken. Those who were without horses flanked the soldiers, using the terrain to their advantage as they fired from hidden spots along the sides. Red Feather, charging at the front, noticed one flag bearer struggling to rise after being shot down. The man, despite his injuries, tried to lift himself, defying his wounds. Red Feather struck him with his quirt, and a warrior close behind swiftly seized the fallen flag, a symbol of their relentless pursuit and unity. Red Feather noted that the soldiers did not remain hidden in the woods for long. Instead, they made a break for the open field, an act that surprised him as it left them vulnerable to the warriors' attacks. This tactical error allowed the Sioux to close in even further, intensifying their pursuit. Red Feather watched as two soldiers attempted to flee, only to be overtaken by the swift Sioux horses, their powerful strides closing the gap in seconds. The dust and smoke filled the air, each breath thick with the scent of gunpowder, and the sounds of shouted commands and cries of pain reverberated across the battlefield. From among the warriors, a voice rang out. "Give way! Let the soldiers out! We can't get at them in there." Heeding this call, the warriors allowed the soldiers to move toward the river. But as they emerged from the woods, the Sioux surrounded them, pressing forward with fierce determination. Just then, Crazy Horse arrived, his late presence stirring a renewed surge of courage among the warriors. The soldiers, clutching their six-shooters tightly, tried to fend off the advancing warriors. Red Feather kept his distance, aiming at the soldiers' horses and bringing down as many as he could, immobilizing them and leaving them vulnerable. He saw one soldier fall from his horse, his foot tangled in the stirrup, dragging him helplessly across the ground and through the creek, his cries lost amidst the chaos of battle. Nearby, Red Feather spotted two men in distinct white shirts and blue trousers, clearly scouts, attempting to cross the river. Recognizing them, Kicking Bear called out, "These two are Indians. Palani?" Without delay, Red Feather took down the horse of one scout, while Kicking Bear pursued the other, firing twice and hitting his mark. Red Feather finished the job with his blade, ensuring that neither scout would escape to relay what had transpired. The battle grew only more intense as time wore on. At one point, Red Feather's own horse was shot from under him, leaving him to continue on foot. He crawled up a nearby hill, taking cover behind sagebrush and exchanging gunfire with the remaining soldiers. Amidst the chaos, flying by, an elder warrior with his hair tied back moved steadily, his voice calling out words of encouragement to the younger fighters. His presence was grounding, a steady force amidst the storm of the battlefield. In a remarkable and unforgettable moment, Crazy Horse rode his horse directly between the Sioux and the soldiers, daring them to strike him. The soldiers fired, yet somehow every bullet missed him. Inspired by his bravery, the warriors surged forward, sensing that the soldiers' ammunition might finally be dwindling. The Sioux charged over the hill, Red Feather among them, his war cry fierce as he fired into the retreating soldiers. Though he did not pursue them far, he took a moment to gather what supplies had been left behind: saddlebags filled with ground coffee, ammunition, and a small can of whiskey. Curious, he took a sip, only to immediately spit it out, the taste bitter and foreign. Looking back on the battle later, Red Feather felt both pride and sorrow. It had been the most intense, relentless fight he had ever encountered, a true test of courage and loyalty. It was a terrible battle, he would later recall, the hardest I had ever seen. For Red Feather, this was more than a skirmish. It was a testament to the warrior spirit, a fight for their land, their families, and their legacy. The memories of that day, he knew, would be carried forward by his people, woven into the fabric of their story for generations to come.